All right, well, then I will turn it over to Bryce, who will introduce today's program.
Thank you, Julia. Today we are lucky enough to welcome my father-in-law, Mr. David Michael Smith. He has worked in radio broadcasting, publishing. He is beyond eloquent. He will be talking to us today about mindfulness and meditation and how we can try and find some semblance of peace in this crazy world that we're in at the moment. So without further ado, thank you, David.
Thanks, Bryce. I appreciate the invitation. And hello to all of you. Yeah, I'm wondering what's next. Possibly frogs, maybe locusts. I'm not sure. As far as I know, the Willamette River has not yet turned into blood, but
read the book of Job.
It's early in the month, so who knows what's coming. Yeah, 2020 has been quite a year. And I've been a meditator for, I was thinking about it this morning, 35 years. I'm in recovery from alcohol and drug abuse, have been since 85. And as part of the program that I have pursued, meditation is a very important component of that. And I would suspect, like most Westerners back in the 80s, only a select number of people had really thought very much about or heard very much about meditation. It's gotten quite popular. There's even, I noticed in the checkout stand at the grocery store, there's a mindfulness magazine. So, once you hit the pop culture, things are catching fire. The first thing I would like to convey to you is that some people with a religious practice have the impression that meditation is somehow possibly in conflict with their belief system. And I just want to assure you that that's not the case. What I'm going to invite you to participate in here in a few minutes is it can be either a secular practice, which is what we'll do today, or you can indeed incorporate it as an extension of your religious practice. It has generally come back to us from the East through Buddhism, but the early Christian fathers in the first 3 or 4 centuries after Jesus died were big time meditators, and that just kind of fell by the wayside for one reason or another as the centuries went by. So until an anonymous writer in the 11th century wrote a book called The Cloud of Unknowing, meditation was just kind of shunted to the side in Western culture. But again, because of the extraordinary times in which we live, the continual pressures put upon us by media consumption and by this phenomenon that if you're my age, you didn't even have an inkling of when you were growing up, which is the internet. It's just a constant barrage. Our work schedules, trying to raise and participate in family activities. It seems like life is just accelerating all the time, and there's hardly any room, if any, frankly, for quiet time. And I think that the science now has really done a great deal of exploration into mindfulness meditation and what it does. And I know that I've printed out a handout that I'm hoping Bryce will be able to get to you if after spending a few minutes with me here, you're interested in pursuing the subject further. But there's been a great deal of research which indicates that as a stress reliever, as a blood pressure lowerer, as an aid to digestion, as an aid to sleep, meditation is actually, there's nothing that can compare with it. No pharmaceutical or over-the-counter or prescribed or otherwise can have as advantageous an effect as meditation can. At least that's been my experience with it. I know that some nights I'll be lying in bed with race brain, something I'm sure we're all familiar with, the little bitty shitty committee that seems to chomp away inside our brains, not letting us go to sleep. And I have found that if I get up and just sit in meditation for a very few minutes, it gives the mind an opportunity to run through its processing, and then I can go to sleep much more easily. So again, the research has indicated that there are all sorts of physiological, biological, and emotional advantages to doing what is called mindfulness meditation. There are many, many different forms of meditation, most of which I think could be more accurately described as contemplation, where one takes a particular subject or imagery and uses that as a focal point. With mindfulness meditation, the point really is to simply observe the workings of the mind. And I think one of the first discoveries, which can be quite startling for anyone who has never tried meditation, is that the mind has a mind of its own. You know, we tend to think that we're in control of our thinking. And again, one of the first discoveries, I think, when you sit on a meditation chair or cushion, is that the mind kind of does its own thing. So this gives it an opportunity to unwind, but it also provides us with the opportunity to watch what it does and to develop what, for want of a better term, I'll call the observer. And the advantage of that is that once you develop this observer, you will find that it pops into your consciousness much more readily during the ordinary, everyday aspects of your life. You may be in the middle of a conversation with someone. There might perhaps be some contention involved in that conversation. An experienced meditator will discover that they have the opportunity to recognize what it is that's actually going on in that moment. Those moments which normally might be very difficult to navigate because of their emotional texture. And there's a lot to be said for being able to know what it is that a given moment contains. You know, one of my teachers said the most important question in life is, what is this? What is this that's going on at this very moment? I think most of us tend to live in regret of certain things in the past and maybe fear or anticipation of the future, but real life is unfolding right here, right now. So if you'll indulge me, I'm not going to do anything too strenuous to stretch your skills. I'm just going to do a 5-minute quiet meditation. And what I invite you to do is simply close your eyes and just be comfortable in whatever chair you might find yourself. And follow your breathing. Let that be the focal point of your attention. You will find that it won't take very long, usually only a matter of seconds, before the mind is off and running again in some direction. You're thinking about those bills that need to be paid. You're wondering, why am I sitting through this silly lecture? All kinds of different thoughts will occur to you. That's fine, because that's the way the mind works. And my suggestion is that rather than judge yourself for having your mind drift or for judging the contents of your thoughts, just simply take note that, there I am thinking about those bills again, and come back to the breath. Focus on the inhalation and the exhalation of your breath. And again, we'll just do it for 5 minutes. And then if there's any time left, I would love to hear from anyone who wants to share what their experience is like. And I will tell you this now, and I'll also reinforce this at the end. There are, of course, if life is worth living, it must have an app. And there are at least a couple of apps that I would suggest or recommend for anyone who is interested in trying this as a regular way to deal with stress. One is called Insight Timer, and the other is called simply Calm. And they contain the ability for you to track how long you meditate, but they also contain a wide range of guided meditations, which some people find is more suited to their temperament. Some of us just simply don't like sitting there and letting the mind do its thing, and that's fine. There are some lovely specific meditations for sleeping, for getting to sleep, for relieving particular kinds of stress and so on. I know that Bryce's wife, my daughter, uses Insight Timer with our 4-year-old grandchild, and they do guided meditations just before they go to sleep. And it really is a great way to get a hyperactive 4-year-old a little bit more calmed down before bedtime. So with your indulgence, you'll hear a gong. And then when the 5 minutes is all over with, you'll hear another one, which will signify the end of the meditation. And then perhaps we can discuss, if you are of a mind to do so, we'll discuss what your experience was like. We're only going to do 5 minutes. Generally, if you adopt a practice, I personally find that 20 minutes in the morning, right after getting up, and then 20 minutes at night before going to bed to, again, kind of give the mind an opportunity to unwind from the stresses of the day. So here we go. The mind wanders and we simply return to the breath. And we'll, we'll end this brief period of meditation with my voice. I forgot to set it up so that it would chime again after 5 minutes. So we'll just end with the affirmation that may all beings be free of suffering, and may all beings benefit from the merits of my practice. Very simple, but like so many things that are simple and efficacious that work, not necessarily easy. I think a group practice is much easier to do than it is to do a singular practice at home. But I can assure you that if you try it, you'll get enamored with it. You will not want to stop. You'll just see a tremendous number of advantages. I've literally seen this practice turn people's lives around. So that, in essence, is the nature of the practice. We sit here in silence because it's more conducive to the state of mind that we are aiming for. Whereas there will be situations in which, for example, the forest monks in Thailand, they are Buddhists, will come out of the forest and go into Bangkok on a regular basis and sit on a busy street corner so that they can have the distractions of all that traffic and noise in order to add more of a challenge to their meditation, since they have plenty of opportunity to sit in the silence of the forest. I don't think any of us need to seek out distractions. I think there's just plenty everywhere we go. Lots of television, lots of internet, lots of radio, you name it. So I'm again going to have Bryce provide you with a suggested reading list. There are 4 or 5 little books that would help tremendously. And I just want to emphasize again that if you are strongly of a Christian or any other religious bent, I assure you this is not a distraction from or an intent to any way water down or mitigate or negate any aspect of your religious beliefs. So what I'd like to do is open it up for any feedback that you might like to give, a description perhaps of what you experienced. And of course, if I don't get any volunteers, I happen to have the participant list right here in front of me. And I believe I have, what, Bryce, about 5 more minutes?
We usually run until around 1 o'clock. So
okay, well,
like
I don't
15.
want to overextend my welcome, but if there is anything that any thoughts that you might have about what your experience was like, even if you didn't think it was a valuable one, I would love to hear, that kind of feedback as well. I'm not afraid.
Is it okay?
David, Tim Pearson here. I just want to make comment. This is a great topic. I think meditation is real important. I actually took up something similar to what I consider meditation about a dozen years ago, and it actually likens into an afternoon nap. But that being said, what happens is that when I begin to meditate, it's only when I'm horizontal, completely on my back. And that will eventually turn into my taking a little nap. However, it only lasts for about 20 or 30 minutes. And when I'm done with that, yeah, it's a daily thing for me if I can fit it in. I usually try to do it at about 3 o'clock every day. It's only a 1 a day thing. I do call it meditation, but I think it's a little different than what you're talking about with the mindful meditation.
Yeah. Again, there are so many different forms that meditation takes, and I've had people through the years say, well, every time I try this, I fall asleep. Well, that's your body and your mind trying to tell you that you need rest. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to fall asleep after a good meditation session. It's generally recommended that we sit. In fact, the slang way of referring to meditation is sitting. I'm going to sit today for 10 minutes or whatever. And I think you'll find that that might be a bit more conducive to, again, developing some of the skills that are possible with mindfulness. And then after 10 minutes or however long you might set a timer for, you can lie right down and, you know, take a power nap. There is research that actually indicates physiologically we are hardwired, our nervous system is hardwired to take a siesta. It's not as much a cultural practice as one might think. It's actually a cycle of brainwave activity that can be of benefit. I know now in my advanced years that I take a little nap in the afternoon, and it's great. It's very refreshing. Anyone else have any feedback or comments?
A question about meditation and yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Do they relate well together? Can you meditate while you're doing yoga?
Yes, that's a really good question. Until this pandemic, I was a regular lap swimmer. I would swim 3 or 4 times a week over here at the Forest Grove pool, which I miss greatly. And I would turn those sessions into an extension of my meditative practice. I would simply allow, instead of focusing on the breath only, I would be able to focus on the sensations of my breathing and then really get into the myriad of sensations associated with, you know, swimming, with arm over arm and head underwater, head above water. And so yoga is a wonderfully complementary form, or really in its own right. I think an avowed yoga practitioner would be quick to say, well, it's a meditation in and of itself, because again, you're utilizing the time that you're on that mat to focus on a particular thing, to be as much as possible in the present moment. So yeah, I think they're highly complementary. It's a good question. Thank you.
I've heard that long distance runners can eventually become a meditative experience.
There's no question about it. Yeah, any kind of rhythmic or repetitive activity. I mean, if you watch a musician, they definitely go into an altered state of what I would consider to. I'll bet if you did, and I'm sure it's been done, if you were to track their brainwave activity while they're doing what they're doing, it would be similar, if not exactly the same as someone who is sitting in a formal meditative practice. Yeah, I mean, so that's another good point, is that it not only does it's a tremendous stress reliever, but it also really helps us develop our concentration abilities.
Well, one of the comments that you made is it is not contradictive to a Christian practice. And one of the things that they tell us, as I've been trained as a pastor, and one of the things that they tell us and they teach us is to be still and know that I am God. And so it is good to take time to sit and just let yourself be overwhelmed by the glory of God. And to do that, you have to remove everything from your practice, from your mind, what you're doing. And so this is, as you say, it is not a practice that's against religion. And one other real quick comment, this was outside of the topic. Your daughter and my daughter went to school together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Bryce's wife and my daughter are classmates.
It goes by like a dream. Amazing. I see her and our granddaughter so clearly. Sometimes I wind up actually confusing their names. The experiences seem only moments apart sometimes.
Yep.
You know, I appreciate your saying that about, and again, I refer back to that book, The Cloud of Unknowing. The suggestion of the anonymous author was that you take your system of dogmatic belief and just for the moment you set it aside and allow yourself to be totally in the presence of, again, if you are so inclined, in the presence of the divine. But It does not have to be a spiritual practice, although I find it to be a very elegant one for getting me in touch with what I consider my higher power to be. And you're right. How can we have any connection to the earth and its rhythms? I mean, we've lost so much in terms of sidereal and lunar and other types of rhythms that for centuries humans were tied into that because technology had not intervened yet. Whereas now it's quite possible to go through a whole season without really focusing on, what's going on with your body and your mind. And it's important that we swim upstream against that and reestablish connection with the world as it is.
I'd like to mention two things. One is that this was one of the major topic of our Peace Village that we did last year. And so that it's worthwhile mentioning that, we don't have, it's not related to our age or anything.
No.
We'd like to get them started young.
Oh, I think that's an excellent point. Yeah, in fact, sometimes, the old bromide about you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We have more perhaps resistance as elders than not to, new information coming our way. And with meditation, I think it's often associated with figures of the Buddha and, incense and gongs and all that. You don't have to get into any of that. Some of us who like the theatrical presentation a little bit more than maybe we should. I enjoy setting up a specific area for myself, in my room for meditating, and icons that I think contribute to the practice that I'm doing. But yeah, another good
The second thing is I'd like to be on a short list from Bryce, list of the books that you refer to, and we'll check it against your library.
I've sent it to Blake, and we'll have it in this week's
Good.
Rototeller.
Super.
Yeah, and I also invite any of you, Bryce can maybe make that available on the handout as well. I'm always available or happy to talk about this topic. It's one of my favorite. There's so much, we just didn't have time to go into here. But also if someone was of a mind to start a meditation group, I'd be happy to help you get that going and facilitate that. As I've mentioned, a group practice, there's something about the energy of a group of people involved in the endeavor at the same time that just raises the energy in the room. And I think you'd find it really different and beneficial to do it with more than one person. So. I believe it was Jesus who was credited with saying that where two or more are gathered in my name.
Do we have any more questions for David? All right, thank you so much, David, for being here and sharing that with us. This is the perfect time in the world to be practicing meditation and mindfulness. I think all of us could use a mental health break each day. So thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and keep making that son-in-law of mine work hard.